Mr. Shikhar Jain, Deputy Head, CII-ITC Center of Excellence for Sustainable Development, dignitaries, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the SteelZero India Conclave hosted by Climate Group, along with Confederation of Indian Industries, CII, under the aegis of B20 within India's presidency of the G20 this year. Climate change is one of the priorities for B20 this year, and industrial decarbonization from low emission technologies is an important lever to achieve this. Today's event, the SteelZero Enclave, will focus on steel decarbonization and will be part of a series of discussions and policy advocacy forums across India with an overall aim to realize the B20 strategic vision and translating it into concrete and actionable policy recommendations. Now, coming down to why it is important to address the future of steel. So steel is the world's most widely used material, from buildings to bridges, scissors to saucepans, cars to wind turbines. It is found almost in every aspect of our lives. Unfortunately, steel making is currently one of the biggest emitters of carbon dioxide globally, despite the fact that technologies exist for its production to be decarbonized. Total greenhouse gas emissions from the steel sector globally account to around 7% of global annual emissions, and this is projected to rise in line with the increasing demand because of the development patterns. Given we have less than 10 years to have global carbon emissions to get the world on track to reach net zero by mid-century, decarbonizing steel making needs to be a critical part of our journey. The steel sector contributes to 12% of India's total greenhouse gas emission, and therefore it has an important place in the decarbonization of heavy industry in India, particularly in the light of our 2070 net zero target. India's average emission intensity of crude steel is much higher than the global average, and there is merit in taking concrete action now, considering that the demand and production capacity of crude steel in India will grow exponentially in the coming decades. Besides this, India will see a significant economic transformation with a period of strong growth over the next few decades. This period will be marked by a massive increase in the demand for steel. Our analysis says that the steel demand will rise to 430 million tons by 2050 from around 103 million tons in 2021. And in the context of this fact that India is hosting a gathering of top world economies, G20, to discuss pressing issues of global importance, this poses a great opportunity for climate leadership on sectors such as steel. Key levers to fuel and sustain India's decarbonization journey include investment in new and transformation technologies. It includes investment on policy initiatives such as the Green Steel Mission, the Green Public Procurement, Steel Scrape Policy, Green Hydrogen Mission, but also besides this, creating a market demand for low carbon steel. Increasing demand for green steel will be a powerful driver for steel producers to make the necessary investment to decarbonize steel production, and towards this end, Climate Group's SteelZero campaign strives to drive corporate action, complementing government's effort through public procurement. Although SteelZero is a demand-side campaign, and it's led by us in partnership with Responsible Steel. This is a global initiative that brings together forward-looking organizations and businesses to speed up the transition to net zero steel. Organizations that join SteelZero make a public commitment to use, procure and specify 100% net zero steel by 2050. By harnessing their collective purchasing power and influence, SteelZero sends a strong demand signal to shift global markets and policies towards responsible production and sourcing of steel. This is in line with other campaigns of Climate Group, that is RE100, EP100 and EV100, which focus on demand-side led action to shift markets. Role of an initiative such as SteelZero is in creating and aggregating market demand for low carbon steel in India. And this can be achieved by way of bringing the ecosystem together, which may involve steel producers, steel buyers, policymakers,
financial institutions, and also civil society organizations. It will also include creating an understanding of sector-specific challenges and enabling sharing of ideas across the board, creating collaborations that can help us develop this. Also feeding into future policies and to help scale up private and public sector demand for low carbon steel in India. SteelZero was officially launched in India in July 2022, which is last year, and it is the first initiative which focuses on driving a powerful demand signal for net zero steel. This platform enables leading organizations, their peers and also suppliers to come together and address key barriers currently faced in their steel supply chains. SteelZero members are climate leaders driving positive change and future-proofing their businesses. The emissions associated with steel production also tend to account for a significant proportion of an organization's supply chain emissions also. And therefore, for businesses joining SteelZero, it will help them to speed up the transition to wide-scale production of net zero steel, helping organizations to meet wider decarbonization targets. Corporate and public sector demand for low-emission steel has a particularly critical role to play in reducing emissions, encouraging new low-emission steel production technologies, as well as driving lower emissions from recycled steel and the reuse of steel-based products. Now, the question would be, what do companies need? What do they commit to when they join SteelZero? So basically, those companies that join SteelZero, they make a public commitment to procure, specify or stock 100% net zero steel by 2050 as a long-term commitment, and as an interim commitment to procure at least 50% of its steel requirement by 2030, meeting one or a combination of steel produced by a steel making site that has set a GHG emission target approved by SBTi, which is Science Based Target Initiative, or equivalent, or else responsible steel certified steel or equivalent, or low carbon, low embodied carbon steel with a defined emission intensity depending on the proportion of scrap steel used. In an effort to understand the market and demand drivers in India for net zero steel, Climate Group has recently published the India Net Zero Steel Demand Outlook Report. This report brings out the economic and decarbonization opportunities available to Indian steelmakers today and makes an important case for adoption of low carbon technologies for steel production. KPMG India was the knowledge partner for production of this report along with Climate Group. As of today, 32 global companies are members of SteelZero. These include automobile manufacturers, construction and property developers, equipment manufacturers, steel fabricators, among others. Coming back to today's deliberations, we have a great line of speakers that would introduce us all to several aspects of net zero transition, particularly steel decarbonization, and we all look forward to the same. I am taking this opportunity to thank CII for having us as their knowledge partners to B20 deliberations. A big thanks to Edelgave Foundation, India Climate Collaborative and SET Fund for supporting our work on steel in India. We really value that. Look forward to a great day ahead. I would like to invite Shikhar for his address.
Good morning, everybody. I add my thanks to Divya, what she said, to each one of you for coming today to this. I say it as a stakeholder dialogue, means although whatever is the title of the event. Very important for us, since I represent CII and CII is the part of the B20, leading the B20 dialogues, and we have two important task force within B20, and feedback from this consultation directly goes into that, because we hear all the stakeholders who are over here. Some of you I just met before the session, coming from think tanks, private sector, global outlook from some of your partners, I think, who will join virtually. Some of the industries, also guys from ministry, from UN. So I think it's a very good audience to interact amongst yourselves, and also feedback. I think that's what I'm trying to bring up front. Just to give you a brief background of you understand what G20 and B20 is, because this stakeholder consultation or this workshop we are doing under the banner of B20, and Climate Group is our sort of partner throughout this complete B20 journey, and they are giving us important information from the point of work that they have done both internationally and locally. Locally, of course, the reports that they have prepared, and I was just talking to Anna just before that we need the global experiences as well. The reason is that as B20, when we take these recommendations to G20, I think one thought process that is emerging out is that while all of us discuss about Indian decarbonization plan for the industry, but there is a great learning that we can also adopt from what G7 nations have done or what developed economies have done, and what are the pathways that they have followed. Could be there some learnings, the pitfalls, the challenges that they have encountered, and what's the way forward looking into that, so that our policy making, our decision making, both at private sector and government, takes learning from that. And I think this is also one of the important things that we learn in the B20, G20 deliberations is, and if some of you have those thoughts, I think that can give us more practical exposure than what we do from the theoretical part. So that's why I'm not going into the numbers part that, okay, what is the steel production, how much it is going to happen, but in general, overall as B20, what our role as CII is and what the role of G20 is. And just to bring out the importance of both B20 and G20 is, this is a forum for more involvement of trade related initiatives, investments, and how the economy can grow. So I think these are the three major things for any dialogue, and in these dialogues, these two topics which we are going to discuss today, which our team within CI is handling, is the topic of energy, climate change, and resource efficiency. Well, these are also becoming sort of the discussion points for expanding trade, investment, and economic outlook. And I think that's why the involvement of think tanks and the stakeholders like you become very important, because what happens in the workshops like this is that we go and jump directly more into the climate issues or the environment issues and all, but we have to see a larger picture also, that while we are recommending, how does that influence the business outlook within the countries, that is the trade, investments, and the economy, how they can sort of develop. So that's one important part that we need to keep at the back of the mind. Second important thing is that while we see a lot of examples of the private sector, because I see a lot of companies over here and some good work that Climate Group has already done. So we know that these are the data points which gets endorsed by the private sector. While we are writing the recommendations from B20 which goes to G20, one of the important things is that both these recommendations are very important. One is from the private sector, what private sector wants. So Divya gave some data that what is the amount of steel we are going to produce for 430 million by 2050, where we have reached now, how much is the green steel that we can produce, what are the sources. So who does that investment? So what are those market-based initiatives that private sector would be interested in? And then what are the government-related issues, which is more regulatory in nature, more sort of negotiations between bilateral or at the G20 forum. So I think these two becomes a very important part of our recommendation. So my request to Divya and team is that while there are good sessions planned, I think whatever is the outcome, that will be very important for us to shape the recommendation. So I need to thank all of you that you are playing a very important role for by attending this session today, that at least your views, your recommendations get at least heard at the level of stakeholder consultation. We come to know that, okay, this is what your thought process is. And definitely if we find a merit in that, then through Climate Group, which produces the report, we ask them to formally put it over onto the B20 portal also, because that's the formal way in which the recommendations are coming to the task force members. So that's the process that we follow. And also parallelly, I know that Ministry of Steel is also doing many sort of initiatives, and the recent one that they have started is on the green steel, where they have set up some task forces and all. So what change we are also seeing in India is that it's not only Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, but the respective ministries like Ministry of Steel, Ministry of Textile, Ministry of Heavy Industries, MOA, they are also now getting involved in these dialogues on climate and all, which is a good sign that at least now they are recognizing that this is an important deliberation to take forward. So I think important for us would also be that whatever is the outcome of this particular consultations might be separately, Divya, we meet Ministry of Steel to get their endorsement also, because we don't want that there is not alignment in the recommendation that we are doing from B20 and the G20 recommendations are on the different track. And that's why I also suggested Anna and the foreign visitors over here that how we can align even the thought process that is coming from their country, from their experience, so that we can add on those things which is very practicable and we don't go into any confrontation when we are actually recommending all this information which gets into the leader summit in September, and then the Indian presidency ends and pass it on to the Brazil. So that's the very important dialogue that we need to look into. Also important is that as we are discussing precisely more towards steel and the figures that Divya shared, from our experience it is both, not only the process side of it which the steel ministry looks after, but as we say, steel is also a notified sort of a hard to abate sector, and I see some presentation on net zero concrete or something also that the climate group has started working on. I think this would be really important, because equally Ministry of Power, because energy contributes a very sort of important contribution to the total emission basket of India. So I think both the recommendations are very important, that whether we are giving it from the process point of view, where we are recommending some of the technologies, whether it is green hydrogen or the color of hydrogen, how do we go into the transformation part of it, or we are giving specific recommendation on the process side, that what are the efficiencies, what are the things to be improved. So from your experience, if this could be segregated and also given a very precise sort of a knowledge, it would definitely help us to capture this information as well. And hopefully, I was assuming somebody from BE, Dr. Bakre would be coming, but I think we as CII work very closely with BE. Definitely, whatever are the recommendations over here, as I said, not only we share this with Ministry of Steel, but also with BE and Ministry of Power might be, so that this is the knowledge that doesn't get sort of wasted. We need to utilize all of you, your time, your commitment coming to this particular forum and getting engaged in this dialogue and formally into the B20 forum. So with this, I welcome all of you. Thank for your presence, and let's dialogue and be sort of very candid from your experience, that what is that you feel and what are the pathways that you from your experience suggest. And I hand it back to either Divya or Atul for going ahead and take it forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Great. Thank you, Divya. My name is Atul Mudliar. I head the business initiatives at the Climate Group here at the India office. A warm welcome to each one of you. A lot of familiar faces. We've done the launch just a few months back in July. And of course, post the launch, there's a lot of work that's gone in from the team here at the Climate Group on SteelZero, one of which is essentially the work that we have done on the report itself, which is the annual, the outlook demand report for a net zero steel in India. Divya has laid out the context of what the SteelZero campaign globally stands for and how is that going to evolve here in India as well. Shikhar has, in many ways than one, also laid out and underscored the importance of the leverage platforms such as these can offer in terms of initiating the right kind of conversations, but also kind of seeking convergence on several macroeconomic issues, including trade as well.